Thank you so much, everyone, for staying with us. Let's begin with the very top story that we are following for you right here on China's television, and it relates to the petrol subsidy and the removal of subsidy announced by President Bola Tinubu on the 29th of May. The Nigerian Labour Congress has since come out and issued a 7-day ultimatum to the President Bola Tinubu and his administration to reverse what they describe as the all anti-poor people policies, including the hike in the price of petrol, which have followed the removal of subsidy. In that communique, which came after the Central Working Committee meeting, which held yesterday, the Labour, threatened that they will embark on a total and indefinite strike action from today, from next week, August the 2nd, should the federal government fail to do the needful. The communique was co-signed by the NLC president and the union's general secretary, Emmanuel Ugbuaja. The NLC says that the federal government has shown enormous disdain and contempt for the Nigerian people, have declared a war of attrition on Nigerian workers and masses. The Nigerian Labour and the federal government team that met today at the presidential villa, a meeting which we understand just ended a few minutes ago. We will be having the Nigerian Labour Congress president joining us in a moment on the program. Let's get some perspective to this, but also we'll be giving you insight into what happened also in the Senate in relation to the Southeast situation, the security situation. The Senate has condemned what is happening there. In fact, some of the senators are asking that the federal government and whoever becomes the Minister of Foreign Affairs should work on extraditing Mr. Simon Ekpa, the man who lives in Finland. But again, we will also be touching on the situation that happened in court yesterday, where we saw a situation where the DSS and a correctional facility official in a scuffle. That situation, the DSS have come out to say that the suspended governor of CBN, Godwin Emefiele, who was arraigned at the Federal High Court Ikoyi yesterday, and that incident took place between his staff and those of the Nigerian Correctional Service, and saying that that incident was unfortunate and does not in any way reflect the professional disposition of the DSS, and the service says that it did not and would never encourage the incident on the reference. These are incidents that some lawyers had referenced that, in fact, that there is a blatant disobedience to court order and a disdain to the judiciary in Nigeria. Let's get some insight quickly now. I'm being joined by Mr. Kaode Adeluola, who is a senior advocate of Nigeria. He joins us virtually from Lagos. Thank you so much for joining us, Mr. Adeluola. It's good to see you. Let's begin with a very first story, which is on the Nigerian Labour Congress and the threat that they will begin a nationwide strike, which they call final and total. It will begin on the 2nd of August. They had a meeting with the federal government. But don't forget, Mr. Adeluola, that the Nigerian government had gone to the industrial court to stop the NLC from engaging in any kind of action. Now, where does this leave the Labour Congress in this kind of situation? They've described the federal government's action as an anti-people policies.
Thank you very much, Sean, for having me again this evening. But you see, we are in a situation where everybody wants to participate in what's going on, in ensuring that they, in a manner of speaking, protect their own interests. The NLC, if you recall, had said at the beginning when the first subsidy was removed that they were going to go on strike. The TUC also came. But they sat with the representative of government led by Mr. Dele Alaki at the time, and they kind of found a compromise. I don't know what has led to this again, because we are all aware that the increase in fuel price, we are told, is as a result of the value of refined products being shipped to Nigeria. Now, if the NLC wants to go on strike, the question will be, in whose interest? Would it be in the interest of workers only, or in the interest of the generality of the Nigerian populace? Now, the government has gone to court. Will the NLC abide by a court ruling or order, or will they simply go ahead and go on strike? The question will then be, will two wrongs make a right? I do not think so. We need to have an attitude of ensuring that we follow law and order. Now, when we use the words law and order, the tendency is for us to see them as interchangeable. They're not interchangeable. The law is as provided in statutes or constitutions, and order means that we should follow procedure. We should do things that would ensure that there isn't acrimony in the society. We do not unnecessarily charge up the society and make things very difficult for ourselves. So I would think that NLC must see themselves as a formidable force that has access to government. If, for example, they decide to go on strike and we have other unions joining them, we have people, the marine, aviation, then we might, of course, be grinding the country to a standstill. We all feel the pinch of a hike in a price of fuel. There's no doubt about that. Everybody feels it. But we must act in a way that we should be able to bring the best situation to all Nigerians, particularly those who are not so privileged. I will therefore feel that the NLC should not go on strike if there's a court order asking not to do so, and find other means. I'm sure we can find other means of resolving this without necessarily having acrimony on our hands.
I imagine that the order of court that the Nigerian government got probably would have expired by the time the NLC had fixed for its strike. And so I imagine also that some members of the NLC understand the workings of the Nigerian law, and they know that some of these orders will expire after a maximum of 14 days. Some of it 7 days. I guess it was an ex parte order that the federal government got against the NLC. But look, Mr. Adeluola, the resident doctors have also decided to go on nationwide strike. The question is, how do you call the government to order? Don't forget, government is almost next to God in the affairs of men. When government takes a decision, it's to perceive it has an effect, overriding effect, on the activities of every citizen. So how then do you rein in government when government does look like they are out of order? I mean, one will imagine that maybe the negotiation is not really getting a headway. Or what do you think? Or what do you think is the way out?
You know, I look at it this way. Whilst I agree with you that government is a continuum, I do not think we should tar all governments with the same brush. We have this new government that has come in only in the last 59 or 60 days. I think we should give this government a chance until it proves itself as dictatorial and unyielding to the yearnings of people. I think, like you said, if government begins to act in a way that suggests that it's discriminating against one wing of populace against the other, that is the poor versus the rich, or we find a situation where government just simply does not listen to the cries of the people, then there'll be every need for people to rise up. But I think for a government that has just come in, like I was discussing with some classmates of mine, I think I would like to give this government 100 days before I determine what direction they're going or not going. But some things really and truly, I quite agree, cannot continue to wait ad infinitum, like the palliative, although some people say we shouldn't use the word palliative, suggests that we're about to die, that's why we're using palliative. But the truth is, we should allow government to do what it has to do and seek audience with them. I'd like to hear NLC saying, we have tried to meet with Mr. President or his representative. This is the outcome of a meeting. They have been unyielding. And gentlemen of the press, members of the public, the option open to us is this strike. Until then, I think we should all be very, very careful not to unnecessarily upset the status quo. That's what I think, sure.
Yeah, I mean, the labor unions have proven to be an effective force to reining in government, even in the face of military dictatorship. We've seen some very strong labor force in this country in the past. But let me take you to yet another issue, NLC. And this is about the incident which happened yesterday between officials of the, well, we've been told not to refer to them as the DSS, although they refer to themselves as the DSS, but the law, the Constitution refers to them as the SSS. What happened between that institution and the correctional facility official when the court gave an order to say, look, allow this man to go into the custody of the correctional facility. He will be on bail. Pending the time he perfects his bail condition, let him be out of your custody, but in this custody. But the DSS have said, look, we will investigate what happened. We do not condone it. But in the face of how it happened, within the premises of where it happened, how would you describe or analyze that circumstance?
Shell, without mincing words, I'll tell you this. What happened yesterday on the premises of the Federal High Court was sacrilege. Once upon a time, when people walked on the precincts of the courts, just walking past the court, they removed their hats with quiet, just out of respect for the premises, not even the judge himself. So for us to find agents or governments causing such opera on the premises of the courts, the Federal High Court, fighting, getting to fisticuffs and tearing each other's shirts up was very embarrassing to all of us as Nigerians. It was quite disgraceful and should be avoided in future. We must learn to respect institutions. A court gave an order, let this man go on bail or let him remain in the custody of the correctional facility pending his completion of his bail conditions. And to find a situation where another agency of government says, no, you must come with us. The question is why? I think we have come to a point now where those who are members of our security agencies must have occasional seminars on how to conduct themselves everywhere. Because what happened in courts yesterday clearly was shown all over the world, and you can imagine what opinion people must have of us. On the court premises, find people who are supposed to maintain law and order, fighting, causing this kind of commotion, whilst other courtrooms were sitting and judges listening to cases, was wrong in the extreme. Well, the SSS has said they're going to investigate it. The least they can do is to give us the outcome of the investigation and tell us that those who conducted themselves that way have been punished. But we must ensure that this sort of thing does not happen again. I'm not saying so because I'm a legal practitioner. I'm saying so as a citizen of Nigeria. Let us begin to respect our institutions, particularly our courts.
I mean, there are a lot of reactions and comments that have trailed yesterday's incident. Those who have said, look, don't let us take sides. Let's look at what happened. And in fact, even Mr. Emefiele is out of the conversation for a lot of people who may think, oh, Mr. Emefiele, I mean, his case is before the court right now, so nobody is talking about Mr. Emefiele. We're talking about the scenario within the court premises. He's called a temple of justice for some reason. It's a sacred ground. It's a ground of some level of civil holiness where you cannot just mess around like you described it, where people will bow and tremble because that is where justice is usually served. But there are those who have said we should naturally have heard something from the executive that is in charge of these security agencies that control these two entities. Do you imagine, for example, that maybe the president could have intervened and spoken something, especially as it affects the judiciary, that is the bastion of our society, that is somewhat of a balancing equation for our democracy? Do you think?
I agree with you, but you see, that also brings us to the point where right now, a lot of us would love to see ministers appointed and sworn in. If we had that, they would be turning in the direction of either the Attorney General, who must protect the turf of the judiciary, or the Minister of Internal Affairs, who is in charge of the correctional facilities, and ask him, what have you got to say? But right now, everything seems to be, in a state of flux. We need to have these ministers, not only because of what they're going to have to do by way of their responsibilities in terms of running their various ministries, but they will be the people to speak on behalf of their ministries and ensure that when a situation like this happens, we know who to speak to. I mean, we cannot continue to ask ourselves, who should we report these people to? For example, SSS says they're going to do something about it. If they don't do anything about it, who are we going to question? So we need to have things moving. And I'm sure the president is up to the task. Like I said to other people, I have no doubt in mind that he's able to appoint his ministers. Whatever is delaying him, I believe must be for good reason.
Let me take you to yet another matter, and this time around is the security situation in the Southeast region. What is going on there? Senate has described it as uncalled for, and perhaps one man sitting in Finland sending social media messages to the people of a region, 5 states, telling them, sit at home. And some governors had described it and said, look, Enugu government, for example, had said, if you do not go to work, we will seal your outlet. And that also has generated some kind of reaction. The Senate is also proposing a possible extradition of Simon Ekpa. Give us your insight on this one. How possible is it to get this man into Nigeria based on some of the his action or inactions?
So, quite frankly, I do not think we should bother ourselves too much about Simon Ekpa. And I say this because a man sits in Finland and gives instructions to a group of people, and they obey him. Now, whose fault is that, really and true? And I say so with great respect to my fellow citizens who are from those states where Simon Ekpa has simply instructed them not to go about their normal businesses. So if they are obeying because they believe in the cause Simon Ekpa is fighting, honestly, that leaves you and I very little to complain about. If others are simply obeying because they are afraid for their lives and the property, then government must protect them. I am aware that in Enugu State, for example, some people marched around the streets saying that the sit at home is enough and they cannot continue to sit at home. But you see, we are Nigerians. We must look at the yearnings of various people. What are their complaints? How can we assist them in bringing some peace to the region? If there are things that they're complaining about which are genuine, we must see to those things. But by the same token, I do not think anybody, any individual should hold a region or the government of the region or the federal government to ransom. It is wrong. And as far as I'm concerned, people who live and work in the Southeast region should be given an opportunity to work, to go around their businesses without let or hindrance. I don't think Simon Ekpa should be such a problem once you extradite him. Because you see, extradition also in international law is asking more, although it's a matter of law, but it's a way of asking for some favor. you don't want to use up your favor because Simon Ekpa says to some people, don't go to work, and they do not go to work. I really, honestly, I'm at a loss. But quite frankly, I think what we ought to be doing here is seeing how we can ensure that there's peace in that region. People can go about their businesses, and if there are genuine complaints about things going on in that region, I think we all should sit down.
Because, Mr. Adeluola, it does look like leaders, governors in that region are now up in begging for help to rescue their different states, because the sit at home is looking like it's out of their hands. For example, there were confrontations today in Enugu State, 2 persons reportedly dead, and because of reactions towards the sealing off of some people's outlets and shops based on the government's directive that if you obey the sit-at-home order, we will shut your shop. It's a very delicate thing to handle when you have a remotely controlled non-state actor activity in a region that has a legitimate government in place. How do you resolve this kind of scenario, this kind of situation?
So, I do not know what law permits the government to seal my shop if I refuse to go to my shop. I do not know under what law they are operating. But the truth is, if I'm at peace and I have no reason to be afraid, I will go to my shop and open it. So the conditions must be right for people to want to go to their shops. We know that in the past some people did, and they faced the consequences. So you see, the governors themselves, as the chief security officers of the states, must present before the police and the security agencies their readiness to ensure that there is peace in the state. But it looks as if, like someone has said in the past, that a lot of people are hiding. They do not want the sit-at-home strike, but they're not confident enough to say so in public, because, of course, some of them will face consequences back home in the southeast region. So sealing homes or sealing shops or places of work cannot be the solution. I don't think so. I think, if anything, you're making it worse for them. Now they want to go to work on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, and they can't open their shops. The governors were there over the last so many months when this sit-at-home strike was on, before it became something almost mandatory, and they didn't do anything at the time. I think anyone who's a politician, anyone who has a clout in the Southeast, should, in the interest of all that will be affected by their action or inaction, to do something concerning this and bring peace back to that region. We need Southeast to be at peace. We need them to be at peace.
Mr. Kayode Adeluola, thank you so much. Senior Advocate of Nigeria, I sincerely appreciate your time and the insights you have given to all of these issues, a long list of them.